I hear a voice, it's faint and weak, two pink pills to fall asleep.
So I guess just like firstly, how did you sort of get into making art? Like where did this begin for you? I don't know if either of you went to college for art or if it's just something you sort of started. Well, that's a big question, but
My mom, so I grew up in Lawrence, Kansas, which is home of the Jayhawks, University of Kansas. And my mom, when I was a small kid, went to school for printmaking. So this is in the 70s, so I had free reign of the whole place, and kind of a lot of my early memories were just my mom going to art school, and it was the extended remix. I don't know if it took like 6-8 years. And my parents were print collectors, and so they always had art books and prints all over the house, and I just always just kind of gravitated towards them. And my grandfather was one of my grandfathers was like a jazz musician, and so there was always kind of that vibe going on growing up. And then of course I rejected it as a youngster, because that wasn't really cool. But a lot of my friends did spray paint art, and we were skaters, and so that was kind of endemic in the skating scene in Kansas. I can't speak for anywhere else. And then I went to the University of Kansas because I didn't know what else to do, and I was like, philosophy sounds interesting. And I never really did much art in high school or anything. And I was reading about aesthetics, and then I was like, okay, I think I kind of want to do it instead of read about it. So then I went into the art program, and discovered that I really became obsessed with creating visual images. And it's just like, it was like a puzzle piece that had always been missing. It was like, it just clicked and it seemed right. And so I've been doing it since then.
wait,
Yeah.
it's great.
Well, let's see. I feel like I was always drawing like when I was a kid. My mom, I think she always had really good handwriting. Something about her, like handwriting, that was always beautiful. But like really when it like fully registered and like became a practice or something I did regularly was in grade school. Like I can vividly remember like 4th, 5th grade, like learning lettering. And then when I went to junior high, I had this art teacher, Mr. Johnson, that just like kind of like opened the floodgates a little bit. And similar to you, skateboarding was like one of those other like creative outlets that exposed me to graphic art. And like there was something cool and visceral about skateboarding that intertwined with art in a way. And then, yeah, at 14, 100%, like I got introduced to graphic arts, like in high school, which was like more mechanical graphics, chasing type, letterpress, stuff like that, and silk screening primarily. And then I decided I was going to go to school for graphic arts, which inevitably I dropped out of college. But ever since then, I always had a sketchbook, always drew, always painted, always... If somebody was doing something creative, graffiti, whatever, like I was like, wait, what's that? And I would dig into it and go. And I've like just continuously done that like ever since, like in weird different permutations. But to go back to graphic design, like studied that in school for a couple of years. And I always thought that would be the thing that would afford me to be an artist. Mm-hmm. So like there was like if I was gonna have a job, then I could use that money to support art, and that side would just feed me. Yeah. So like, just been kind of doing it continuously. So like, I don't know. And that was...
What did you think about 3D? Like
so initially I was doing like I feel like everybody does, painting and stuff like that. I recognized early on, like I was never going to be a Rembrandt. I didn't have the patience for like oil paint and stuff like that. And I was making like assemblages.
Okay.
Probably in the early 2000s. Started, like doing street art assemblages, stuff like that. And then, what did I make? I feel like I made some random sculptures here and there, but the assemblage stuff I really enjoyed, and that was a mostly found object. And then I started getting into like constructing things out of new materials, but like doing shoshugiban, like burning them and doing stuff like that. So I like that process. And I just felt like it was limiting. Like I felt like the wall was limiting me. And I wanted to interface and intersect kind of like graffiti and kind of like street art. Like I wanted to interface with the human in a different and new way. And I figured an object like had to force you to confront it differently.
Yeah.
So then I just went on a tangent, I guess. And now it's like the only thing I think about doing, like pretty much all the time. Yeah.
It's cool that you both mentioned street art and skateboarding, because that was the first thing I kind of identified in your work, was like street art, graffiti, sort of skateboarding, tattooing culture is something I'm very like familiar with. So I saw that in your work. Do you feel like that's something that's still sort of like manifests in what you're making, or is that kind of just like your jumping off point?
For me, definitely. I mean, I skateboard still. I've been skateboarding 43 years of my life, I want to say at this point. I'm involved in that in my work, my day job. Graffiti I pay attention to, even though I don't paint graffiti. I don't do that anymore necessarily, but I'm always paying attention to the surfaces, the textures, the bits and pieces. So it's probably in there in some subliminal way. Maybe the newest series of sculptures where it's like sanded away, like, and that reminds me of like layers of walls and buffing and stuff like that. But I would say if it is in there, it's all subconsciously. It's not like at the forefront of what I'm thinking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't skate at all anymore, and I definitely never did graffiti, street art, but travel is like a key part of my life, both as a kid living abroad for several years, and even now with my own kids in my own life, we travel and go to museums, of course, all the time, and go to galleries. And some of the most exciting work I see is non-transactional art, is art that's outside walls, on walls, but outside museums and galleries. And so I feel like it is definitely more visceral and more intuitive and time-based. And I'm really attracted to the immediate perception of that art. And I just see also, I think one of the issues that I see in art that is primarily academically centered is that it's often very, very constrained with a lot of rules. And what I really like is the expressiveness and the ingenuity and the intellectual vigor in street art. And so I spend more time walking around cities looking for street art and looking at how they do things and looking at their compositions, and just my excitement level is just so much more than what it is when I go into galleries or museums, generally speaking. So, yeah.
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, go for it.
Does music affect your work? Like, does music play a part in your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, growing up, I started going to like punk shows in like 4th grade, 5th grade. There was a place in Lawrence, Kansas. There's actually a documentary on YouTube if you want to see it, called The Outhouse, and it was a brick and concrete building with no bathrooms, no running water, just electricity. And because it was in Lawrence, Kansas, a lot of the punk bands and reggae bands and other would cross and stop there on the way to like to Chicago or Austin or New York or wherever. And so I was able to see like Dead Kennedys and like Nirvana on their first tour, and you know, being like, yeah, whatever. And just, they always came through. So I would get on my like 10-speed bike and go down there. And there, you know, and at the time there were a lot of, unfortunately, skinheads, but also a lot of anti-racist skinheads. So it was like a really big scene, but also like just carrying around a skateboard, people would just get out of their trucks and hassle you. So it was not only an identity in terms of like that punk rock ethos and the skating, but also the sounds and the music. And my partner in crime, Julie, she is like so knowledgeable of music. And so when we're at home, we always have music on. At work, there's always music on. And it definitely, like, there are some music I'll listen to that if I'm really stuck can really just rip me out of that. And so it's how about you? Is that?
I listen to music all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to, in my old studio, I had a record player down there, so I would always be listening to the records, and it would honestly help me keep time a lot.
Yeah.
And now that I've shifted studio spaces, I'm always listening to music, but only in my print studio do I have vinyl, and then in my wood shop is more like, you know, Bluetooth. But yeah, it can totally unlock things and then kind of create different moods for the work I'm doing, maybe angles or different reference points. You know, color can affect color for sure. Yeah. So I could have like some dark on and just gets real like neutral, whatever, and then I could, God only knows what I'd be listening to, but then it can be bright and so on. So yeah, plays a huge part. Like, so that hence.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. And I think it's also like key for my philosophy, if I even have one, on art, and the difference between like analytical apprehension of visual things and intuitive. And like, so when I listen to music, I don't analyze it. I'm not thinking about how many beats per minute. Sometimes I'll be like, that's just a guitar, but I'm not thinking about the notes, and I'm not analyzing them and the coda or the refrain. And so for me, music is experienced in its totality and its impression. And for me, my art, I look for my art to be conceived of the same way, without symbolic analysis that is by its very nature derivative of our experience. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Speak.
So both of you obviously have like day jobs, you know, to like regular people things.
Regular people things.
Is that like something that informs the work that you're doing, or do you try to keep that separate? How do you kind of like balance having two full careers? Are those like day jobs creative anyway?
So I'm a dentist. I went to dental school when I was 30. It started in, I had moved to Japan with Julie for a couple of years. We got tired of the rat race. We sold all our stuff and moved there in the middle 90s for a couple of years. We were like teaching English and doing a bunch of other stuff. And I was editing journals for publication, and a dentist was like, oh, I'm an artist. I'm like, well, this is horrible. You stab people in the face with needles. And I had a lot of dental fear at the time too. And I was like, this is just like, no. And he's like, just come to my office, see what I do. And he's like, it's shape, it's sculpture, it's color, it's everything that you do. And I just didn't listen. And then I finally listened. I showed up. I was like, oh, wow, yeah, it's color, it's harmony, it's aesthetics. And I get to work with my hands, and I'm not in a suit, and I don't have a desk, and I get to interact with people, and I get to create little works of art in people's mouths. That's the way I see it. Sculpture that has a base functionality that's very pleasurable, because I know, like, I've seen my art in collectors' homes, and people don't really think about it sometimes when they put it on the wall. It doesn't add necessarily a daily utility because it's on the wall, unlike sculpture, where it's, I think, what I really love about sculpture is that it's activating the space, and it activates you and your relationship to that space, whether you like it or not, or whether you're thinking about it or not. It's something that you have to approach and consider. But I feel like my two-dimensional work is less so. But anyway, so then I realized, yeah, so that was really true, and I still think those ideas are true. That's how I practice. I don't like giving people shots, but the rest of it is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get your card after this. That's wild. What a way to think about it. That's how the guy sold the bill of goods to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was just like, you just, I'm an artist. I was just like, but you're not.
Right.
And it just went back and forth. Yeah, yeah.
Your lawyers.
And he was right. And as usually, I was totally wrong. And it was because I had like this tunnel vision of the way art. I had worked in the commercial side of art after college, and that kind of soured me to the whole idea of earning a living off of your art versus being an artist and having a way to support your art.
Yeah.
Same, like I try my best to separate church and state. I look at both sides as a balance. So, I mean, I work in the creative field. I work at Converse. I design sneakers, and I manage a team that designs sneakers, functional purpose, all that. So it's very cool. As a job, yes, I agree. Like, and I totally lucked into it, or right place, right time. And I have found a lot of joy in that over the years. As I said, I was a graphic artist, that's what I studied. And I left, and then I ended up in industrial design, which I never even realized was a thing until I was doing it. One of those like moments where you like, hindsight's 20/20. I'm like, yeah, it was right there in front of me the whole time. Like, somebody had to design that red Solo cup. Like, you take it for granted it's a vehicle for water to go into your mouth, but like, I didn't think of it that way ever, right? So, but the purpose in my job is to make things for other people, not necessarily for me. And as much as I answer problems, like say for skateboarders or for basketball players, and try to make them better athletes or better at what they do, or make their feet not hurt, hopefully, my work is just for me to get whatever's in my brain like out. It's like almost like therapy in some sort of way. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of that is I make it for me, and it's my expression. And if you like it, cool. And if you don't, cool. It's not for you necessarily. Like, I'm not making it for you. Even though I appreciate having dialogue and conversations around art because I love it. But my job, day in, day out, why did we do this? Why didn't we do that? Should it be that color? Or so on and so forth. So it allows me that space to, like, when I'm done with work, I can go do something for me and me alone, and it can be my creative outlet, no matter if I want to make prints one day or sculpture the next day, or attempt to make a painting and potentially probably throw it in the trash the next day. Like, all of that's for me, but it clears my mind. So when I actually go back to work, like when I approach work, I'm using kind of like the other side of my creative brain, because I have to be about the millimeters and about its function, and really be cautious around color and use things very strategically, where my artwork is kind of more impulsive. Like, if I feel it, I'm gonna go with my feeling, and the result of that is what it is in the end. So like, I think each part of my worlds, like both worlds, is better for having the other side. And I always encourage, like, anybody that I work with and anybody in the creative field, especially if you're creative for a living or for a paycheck or however you want to say it, of like, you should have something else. Like, I worked at an animation studio for a couple of years doing some like really low end work. However, I worked with all these phenomenal artists who all went to like Ringling and all these amazing schools and could draw like nobody's business, and they did nothing after work. Like, they did nothing creative. So always baffled my mind of like, you went to school for 4 or 5 years to get this degree in art and this and that, and then all you do is kind of do corporate work. It blows my mind. I can't fathom it. So for me, it's important to have both. And if I didn't have to work, like, to pay bills or whatever, then I would just make artwork all day long, like, period.
Yeah, that's great. My last big question for you guys is, what does the title Praxis of Happenstance mean to you, and what is your kind of interpretation of intuitive making?
Well, I think like the idea of like praxis is like one of the things I don't like doing, and I also really enjoy is reading about art and the extrapolation of ideas that are secondary to the image. And so for me, that's one theoretical consideration. Another theoretical consideration is the actual action and the actual creation. And that, for me, praxis is taking those ideas and putting them into something that has an application for those ideas that are not necessarily like funneling your intellectual capability. And that's where like the happenstance is also, I think, very important, because when you look at Damion's sculptures, for example, over there, where we have these really beautiful organic shapes that are nestled on each other, that are exquisitely made, but also then you have this surface that is reflective of, for me, many things. One of them is graffiti, one of them is street art, and also like this excavation of surface, and that in some ways that's I would assume a very controlled process, but also, as you said, things are revealed, and the control is when you stop and how much you go. Correct. And so for me, that's in some degree happenstance, but it's also done with great skill and forethought and care. And so both of those words, I think, kind of encompass an intuitive approach that is not analytical. It's not symbolic in nature, where we're dealing with large ideas that we're trying to manifest physically, but more of an expression of occurrence, and more of an expression of how we're feeling, and a completeness of wordless thought in a way.
Can I just say ditto? I mean, for me, it's, I don't know, like there's always like consistent practice to get better, to put in your 10,000 hours to continuously like search and scrub your brain for what you could be or what's out there. And then the other side for me is like the happenstance of like, I feel like I always get lost. I don't know if it's ADHD. I don't never asked anybody if I have that or not. But like, I'm always like really curious. Like you say you don't like reading about like some of those bits. Like I've gotten lost in years where I feel like when I left school, and there was a teacher who kind of influenced me to leave because of how bad they were, especially in art history. Like I've started going back through, like in time now, reading all of the things that I probably should have at a younger age.
Yeah.
And opening up like all these avenues people were, and luckily and maybe unluckily, having smart devices. Like if I hear a name, then I'm down that rabbit hole. I hear and understand like, all of these movements in a new and different way than I think I ever would have understood. So like those things lead me down different corridors. Like, I want to say I was at the Pompidou. I'll use an example. I was at the Pompidou a couple times over, and then I somehow stumbled on Brancusi. And then I didn't realize Brancusi's studio was right outside the Pompidou, which he smartly donated to France, probably to get out of some debt or taxes or something. But then in reading about him, the beauty was like he made the same forms over time and time and time and time, and like perfected them over his lifetime in his studio. And I thought that was such an amazing thing. And now I don't know if I've subliminally co-opted some of that or whatever, but like I'm always in continuous search of perfecting form. And that maybe not the same form, but there's a form language. And this is probably the longest time I've stuck with form language, but I've learned to extend and push that in new and different ways. And a lot of that's happenstance. Like one day I'm just like, all right, paint's on something. I see how that impression lies on a piece of paper. And then I'm like, wait, I have a press upstairs. Let me take this sculpture and ram it through my press. Mm-hmm. Not knowing what will happen, but just allowing that moment to happen. And it could be good or bad, but then learning from that. The Sienna types are a great example. I wanted something instantaneous and would be easy. So maybe easy is not the right way to say it, but like instantaneous. And I just took a sculpture and I put it on a piece of paper and I exposed it and it distorted the form, which was something I couldn't do because I was busy perfecting it. And then I can't control the sun or the light source, so like I had to allow the process to be what it was and relinquish my ideas to the process. So to me, that was totally happenstance. And then I was like, oh wait, went on a tangent for 6 months to do that. And then I'm like, all right, let me put that away for a little bit and come back to it. So to me, it's all about constantly exploring, manifesting, like, I don't know, allowing yourself to just be open to whatever happens, like, right? Like whatever is in front of you, be aware, be aware enough to take advantage of the things in front of you, and don't be so precious with your practice and exploration.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, guys. Thanks for talking to me.
Sweet.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tell